Good afternoon. Just give it a few more minutes for people to come in, then we'll get started on today's webinar. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this webinar, today presented by Solis and Rojo. So what we're going to do, still people coming in, but we'll do the introduction here. Together with our partner Solis, we'll be presenting today's webinar, where we'll touch upon the topic of clean core strategy in relation to SAP's cloud integration and how modernizing your integrations is an opportunity to move from integrations to event-driven integrations or to events. So the agenda for today's webinar looks like this. It'll be about 45 minutes where we present things, and we have 50 minutes time for Q&A. If during the presentation you have any questions or remarks, please use the chat functionality, and we'll respond in the chat or take your questions in the Q&A afterwards. So let's get started and introduce first companies and today's presenters. So Solis and Rojo are both strategic partners to SAP and SAP's business technology platform. And as SAP is driving transformations in their ERP and integration domain, BTP is a key platform for customers to build a future-proof business application landscape for the S/4HANA platform. Advanced Event Mesh is the Solis platform for an event-driven architecture, enabling SAP customers to decouple their applications and connect their business in real time. The adapters provided as native functionality from SAP Cloud Integration to connect with non-SAP are provided by Rojo, and these adapters provide connectivity which is based on as developed according to SAP's best practices. About today's presenters, we have Christian and Ankit here. Both have a technical background and both have been active in the integration domain for years. Christian has been working in the messaging space for over 20 years, of which the last 10 years with Solis. In his current role, he's involved with all EDA solutions concerning SAP. Ankit's experience for over 10 years has been in the SAP integration space and related technologies like Solis. So he's an enterprise architect here with Rojo. And with this, I'll hand it over to Christian, who's going to talk about the drivers for event-driven architecture and how this relates to the building blocks for composable business applications. Over to you, Christian.
Right. Thank you very much, Hugo. Thanks for that introduction. Yeah, I'm just going to share my screen here. So today's topic is really about clean core with SAP, but before we go into this, I thought it would be worth giving a quick overview of kind of like event-driven architecture and the drivers behind event-driven architecture beyond the scope of just SAP, because I've been working in this space for many, many years, and it's really a trend that is not just unique to SAP. And kind of like to set the context around that, we generally see that we live in a world of more. So these are some trends that we're seeing across large enterprises. More and more enterprises have more and more applications. In average, there's over 1,000 per enterprise. We have more and more distributed systems. So 90% of organizations are using multi-cloud or hybrid cloud deployment. So that meaning that the systems are no longer just in one data center, all close to each other. They're distributed across regional sites, data centers, sometimes even cross-regional in different parts of the world. At the same time, we're producing more and more data with these applications, and we're needing to share more and more of that data. So that is roughly up 25% year on year. So every year we're adding more and more to the data that needs to be shared across these applications. And the expectation in general is that this happens faster and faster, so more quickly. Consumers are used to having everything at the tip of their fingertips with smartphones, etc., on all the online systems that are available. So generally, the latency expectations are down from seconds or minutes down to real time. And at the same time, we have the big trend of AI being brought into this now, meaning that we have additional artificial intelligence use cases, retrieval augmented AI, and now the latest trends of agentic AI popping up, which are, to put it simply, another layer of applications that need to be integrated with all the other applications. They need to have access to the data. So it's adding to the integration challenges, and it's making integration more difficult. So when I started working in this area, I actually worked at a bank, and I started programming in COBOL and then working on a mainframe. And that is kind of like where we were like 20, 30 years ago, right? So systems used to be very monolithic, mainframes in the case of the banks, but also in the SAP space, we had R3, we had ECC, big heavy platforms that were running on large servers, and everything was kind of like on the same hardware, and parts of the systems could just communicate with each other in memory. So that made it quite easy from an integration point of view, because everything was co-located on the same hardware. But for a number of years now, we've been moving more and more towards distributed architectures, be it moving away from mainframes or heavy monolithic systems to more distributed systems on different operating systems like Linux and Unix or Windows servers and things like that, but also more and more moving into the cloud. So we are seeing a big trend towards using more cloud native services, and having to combine these with the other systems that are running in your enterprise. Software is at the same time becoming more distributed, more composable. So talking about those large monolithic applications, right, was always very hard to maintain, because if you did changes to that, it had always potential to affect other parts of the system. Also, these systems were very database centric, because they were often co-located with the database running on the same servers. And we are starting to decompose all these larger systems, or we have done this for a number of years now. And so that's really what's behind all these forces driving more and more integration needs, because it's no longer just sitting all on the same box. It needs to communicate with each other, and it needs to share data. And one way to do that is using APIs, which many people have done for a number of years now, and also iPaases to integrate applications with each other. Then the key kind of challenge with that is that it's quite easy to set up, but once you have set it up, it's a point-to-point communication between systems. And when you start trying to make changes to that, it gets harder to make those changes, because you have to, when you're moving one system, migrating one system, for example, you may be going through this right now if you're moving from ECC to S/4HANA, and you have all these point-to-point interfaces, then you have to touch all of these point-to-point interfaces and move them as part of the migration. So we're moving towards a distributed architecture that needs something in between that makes that communication easier. And event-driven architecture based on publish-subscribe pattern is that technology that helps with this. Because when you deploy an advanced event mesh, like we have available here, we can deploy brokers into different locations. We can connect these brokers with each other, and we can just event-enable backend systems to send events into those brokers, and they don't need to know where those events need to go, right? They can just publish it into the broker that is local to them. If other systems are connected to other brokers and are interested in those events, they will have a subscription to those events, and that subscription will be shared across the network of brokers, and the brokers will know where the data needs to go. So it's a abstraction layer that helps really make your systems less coupled and make it easier to communicate between them, because you're also abstracting away challenges around network boundaries, firewalls, and having access to these systems or between these systems. So what are the key components of a next generation integration? We broke it down really to 3 key patterns that are easy to remember. So on the one side, we want the source system to publish the data out. So whenever something happens in one system, we don't want to kind of like wait till other systems are calling in to ask for that data, because we would never know when that data is changing in the source system. So it is much easier and much more efficient to have the source system publish that data out. And the analogy we use is that of a radio station. So you're not calling the radio station to ask for the news of the day. Like, they will just put it out there as and when it happens, and you get breaking news. And if you are tuned into the radio station, you will just receive those news as they come out. So that's a similar analogy with publish and subscribe. If we have news, if we have events, data that changes, that is noteworthy for other applications, we can just put it out into the world on the brokers. Obviously, there's security around that, but you get the gist that it's much easier to just tune into that broadcast versus having to call to ask for the changes. Another aspect is that we have these decoupling aspects. The applications don't even need to know who is publishing the data. This is similar to a luggage handler at an airport. They used to have to basically take a suitcase and locate the passenger one by one, which was kind of okay in the early days of aviation when passenger numbers were very low and airports are very small and so on and so forth. But as aviation industry was scaling up, they needed a way to make it more efficient. And they introduced conveyor belts, where basically the luggage handlers are just putting the suitcase on the conveyor belt. And if the passenger is there, he can just take it. If they're not there yet, the suitcase will just get parked on that conveyor belt and goes around and around until the passenger arrives and can take it off, right? So key here is that the luggage handler and the passenger don't need to be there at the same time, so they're timely decoupled. There's a buffering on the conveyor belt that holds all these suitcases, and they don't need to talk to each other. They don't even need to know, like, who is loading the conveyor belt. They don't need to know who's taking the suitcases off the conveyor belt. And that's similar with event-driven architecture, where we just publish data out and the downstream systems don't really need to know what system it is coming from. They just need to know that they get the right data. And the way we achieve that is through filtering. So when we're publishing events, we attach some metadata to those events that describe the event. So for example, we could have a truck arrived label on the suitcase or on the data or on the event. And if I'm interested in truck arrived events, I can subscribe to this particular information and I will just get a copy of that. But if I want to get payment events and payment done events, then I would subscribe to a different metadata, or we call that a topic. And you can take it down even to fine-grained filtering. So you might want to listen into truck arrived events, but not truck has left events, and so on and so forth. Like, you can do this with fine-grained filtering, and it happens in the middle where it happens in the broker. So that gives you efficiency gains on the consumer side, because you don't have to parse and process data that is irrelevant to you. Okay, so looking a little bit at the clean core, I'm kind of like giving a bit of a sneak peek here, but Hugo and Ankit will take us much more into this topic around how does it work exactly with SAP and clean core, with BTP to leverage this for your clean core. There's two main patterns here that you will need and that you will come across. So one is using clean core with notification events. And that means that the event source on the left here, S/4HANA, will just send a small notification event that just tells you that something has changed. Maybe a business partner was updated, and you get the kind of like the key to the business partner. But you don't know what has been changed. So in those cases, you will have to do a callback to the source system to retrieve that data. And yeah, this has the benefit that it gives you a very small event. It gives you the real-time trigger. You get to notified when something has changed, but you're still using traditional APIs to retrieve the data. And that can be good or bad. Good is that they're often already there and you can call them, but you still have some coupling here because you need to be able to reach that system. Need to be firewall rules in place, and you need to be able to authenticate and so on and so forth. So when we talk about event-driven architecture, we prefer this other pattern here. And this is the pattern of publishing full data events. And in this case, with S/4HANA, we can do this. And whenever like a business object is changed, we can add all that information about the object that was changed. Like maybe there was an address updated and we want the new address in the event. So that's what we would refer to as a full data event, or the industry term is event carried state transfer. You put basically all the information that a downstream consumer needs into the event so they can just receive that, they can process it and can react to this, and no need for a callback. And Ankit will show us some of these patterns in action in a bit, but before we go there, I will pass it back to Hugo for taking us a bit deeper into the SAP Clean Core strategy.
Perfect. Thanks, Christian. So thanks for giving this explanation on EDA and Clean Core. So what is Clean Core? There we are. Because we're not. Here we are. SAP's Clean Core strategy. What is it about? SAP is driving major transformations by upgrading their core systems, either being that moving ECC to S/4HANA or moving the integration platform SAP's process orchestration to SAP Cloud Integration Suite. This all falls under the broader Clean Core initiative. So what is it? What is Clean Core? Basically, the Clean Core aims to modernize ERP systems by minimizing the in-system customizations and maximizing the use of SAP standards capabilities in S/4HANA. Well, this approach simplifies upgrades, reduces costs, and it supports faster cloud adoption through continuous integration and event-driven architectures. So central to this strategy of keeping your ERP core clean is SAP's business technology platform, which allows customers to build side-by-side extensions rather than modifying the existing S/4HANA core. Because if you modify this S/4HANA core, you end up where customers have been before. It's difficult to maintain, difficult to upgrade, and it's at a much higher cost. So when you customize in BTP, you can achieve improved performance, you can reduce your total cost of ownership, and you stay in line with SAP's long-term roadmap for your S/4HANA backend. That's basically the aim of SAP's Clean Core strategy. And a key principle of Clean Core strategy is extensibility. That's the ability to enhance the ERP functionality without compromising the integrity of the core S/4HANA system. There are two types of extensibility. There's an in-app extensibility. These are the customizations you can make within S/4HANA. So you have to think about adjusting the UI, expose data models, or run specific transactions. But the side-by-side extensibility, that's the BTP platform. This is the extensibility we're talking about in this webinar, and this approach leverages SAP's BTP platform to build extensions outside the core system using APIs, event-driven architectures, and low-code, no-code. This strategy addresses issues from the pre-HANA era, where ERPs were customized, and these customizations led to technical debt, to costly maintenance, and to performance issues. So by moving all this custom functionality to BTP, companies can maintain this clean core, this clean ERP, and it's standardized, and it's easier to upgrade, and it's more efficient. We're now moving to the use case and the demo. It will be presented by Ankit, and he's taking over the presentation. Over to you, Ankit.
Thanks, Hugo, for emphasizing the importance of clean core once again. So I think it's very clear that clean core does not mean that we don't need to do a customization or we don't have the option of customization, right? So it's a very common understanding that to adapt to business process or to meet the business requirements, we will have to customize, we will have to extend the solution. And as Hugo explained, there are few options when it comes to extensions, right? So if we look at the role of BTP, right, there can be options of or requirements of customization where we need to build a full stack application, or we need a mobile application for that matter, or there's a need for let's say backend application. There are different types of requirement which can be there when it comes to customization or custom requirements. On the other hand, there can be requirement which is related to automating your whole process using a workflow or process automation, right? So what do we have in BTP are different services which meets this requirement. For example, if I talk, we have option of SAP Build, which meets this requirement of your full stack application, mobile application, or front end or back end application. And here we are also not limited just with the one language which we can use to build all these applications. So you have both the options, that is CAP model or RAP model, which is more leaning towards your ABAP and your CDS views. So from your technical team perspective, you have both the option if you want to go with Java-based development, Node.js-based development, or for that matter, you want to use on the other side ABAP-based or CDS views-based developments. These options are available in BTP using this SAP Build or SAP Build Process Automation services. And to facilitate all these application and processing of these custom application and requirements, one thing is very clear that we need seamless data. And in many cases, it is real-time data which is needed by these applications, right? So if we look at on the other side, that is S/4HANA Cloud side, where we want to keep the core clean, how we say it, we have now business events, which was not there if we talk about, right, 2 or 3 years back. So this has been introduced by SAP. We have this business events which can be configured and which can be triggered for all the business object which is there, or let's say most of the business objects, and can be received by again another functionality which also Christian highlighted, that is Event Broker. In this case, it is Advanced Event Mesh, which is a part of integration suite capability within BTP. So these events again can be of 2 types, one notification and one complete data event. Depending upon the type of event, you might need to further orchestrate to get the data or required data to complete the event and then push to a particular application or database to facilitate all these applications. So you have several options when it comes of getting the data out of your S/4HANA Cloud system and have a seamless integration there, and that to real time. And on top of it, all these applications also need direct access, sometimes to the backend, and which is also possible via CDS views. So that option is also there. So what we see is that we have several options when it comes to meet the requirement of customization or extensibility, and different options on the S/4HANA side to facilitate the data for these customization, right? So this is how we see BTP can enable to achieve the clean core strategy using EDA as a way of let's say architecture. Now moving towards the use case. So what we want to demo today, I would like to give an overview of how our demo would look like and will consist of. So we have taken a use case. One of the use case where we have worked on is related to sales order approval process. So it's a very common requirement across customers where we need to have an approval process where sales order is created in S/4HANA, and it has to go via multiple level of approvals or one level of approval depending upon requirement. And this approver has to be dynamically determined either from our HR system, which is not in S/4HANA, say, for example, or from a different procurement system because of certain business requirements. So that has to be dynamically determined. And we have a different, let's say, requirement. Then once it is approved, certain things should happen. For example, a notification should be further sent back to our delivery and shipment system, and the status should be updated back in S/4HANA. So our demo is also around this use case. What we will do is we will create a sales order, which will be going to event broker. From there, the workflow will be triggered, and then it will go to the different steps of approval process, which we will see just now. And before we also jump to the actual demo, if we look at the technical aspect of this whole, let's say, use case, the services which we're using is on the BTP side, we have SAP Build Process Automation and Business Rules to facilitate the workflow. So as we discussed, that this is one of the options. On the integration side, we are using Advanced Event Mesh and Integration Suite to facilitate the events which we would get from S/4HANA Cloud, and do the orchestration on then cloud integration. Right. So these are the technical components which we are using when it comes to sales order approval process. Now let's jump to the demo part. So if I would switch to my screen, let's just familiarize ourselves with the screens which we are going to use, because there are a lot of moving parts as you saw on the screen. So just to understand which screens we will be going through for this demo. The first is the S/4HANA Cloud System. Here, what we will do, we will be creating a sales order, and we have, let's say, app available for it, which we'll be using for this. And then what we will do is we will also see that this event getting triggered to our event broker. In this case, it is Advanced Event Mesh, to the queue here. And it is real time, so we might not actually see the event coming and going since it is real time, but this is the queue which is subscribed to. And then we have our integration suite, or you can say cloud integration part of it, where this event will be read by Advanced Event Mesh from the queue which we just saw, and then it will trigger the workflow in our BTP system, as you see here. So this is our iFlow in our cloud integration, which is reading this event and pushing or triggering the workflow in SAP Build. So now if we go to SAP Build, the workflow we were talking about, this is the approval process which we have here. As I was explaining, we can have different types of requirements, right, for customization. And this can be done by either creating an application, creating an automated process, which we have done in this use case, or some business side which is required, right? So there are different options there. And if we look at the workflow in our case, let me quickly log in back. Yeah. So it will take some time to load. So what we have is the approval process, depending upon our requirement. And it will have, let's see if it loads, then I can explain it from the screen. Yes, it is here. So if you see here, we have different approval forms. There's one approval form which is at the first stage. If it meets our condition based on the business rules which we have determined, then we have a second level of form to confirm the order. And then we will be sending an email. And after, we will also update the status back to our S/4HANA Cloud. So we have these different steps if the approval is required. It can also be that the approval is not required because it is not meeting the business rule condition which we have defined, right? So these are the different screens which you will see we are hopping through during the demo. So now let's start with the creation of sales order. So starting with the manage sales order app which we have in S/4HANA Cloud, I will go to create sales order. And to save time, I will just copy existing sales order rather than creating from scratch. That's not the idea for demo. So if I would just say one and click on copy, yes, this is here. Let me just update the customer reference so that we can see it. Demo and the reference date, customer, we can put it for today. And we have the required delivery date. Let's put it for future, maybe in a week or 2 week of time. And then let's save this. It is saying that it will be calculating the pricing. Now it is there. So if I would click on save, this at the end will create the sales order. Sales order number 8 has been saved. Now let's take a step back and go to the sales order. Yeah, sales order number 8, which is just created right now. If I click on this one, change sales order to look at it. So what is happening in the background, which is important to notice, is there's an event which got triggered and which we will also see, which will be received by our iFlow to trigger the workflow. What you see here is right now I am not able to edit this sales order, and it is saying withdraw approval request. That's one option which is there. And the reason why we have this is because the order is in approval process. It's in approval. And because of the reason which we have determined, it can be totally custom depending upon your requirement. So that's there, right? Now, so if we go to our, okay, I hope I don't have to log in here. Looks like, let me close this. Yeah, I'm here. Let me search for my queue. So the queue which we are using in this scenario is this sales order, consumer 1. And here again, how Christian was highlighting, it is important to follow the standard or best practices when it comes to event broker itself. So what we are doing here is we are publishing the event to a particular topic, and our queue, which is one of the consumer or for one of the consumer, is listening to this particular topic, that is create sales order. And we have then again consumer of this queue, which in this case is the iFlow. And if you see here, one message was already delivered right now. And if we go to our iFlow, we should have one new message coming just now. Yeah, this got triggered few minutes back or 1 minute back, I think. If I click on here, trace. Yes, I should be able to see the sales order number here. Yeah, this is my sales order number, which is here. And this is the material which we have created. So technically, we have received the order and we are, it should have triggered the workflow. So if I now go back to my SAP build, where my workflow should be working, and go to monitoring, I should see a new workflow process. Let me go to our process and workflow here. I would select only the running one, which should be of just, so if we see, it just got triggered running. And here we can track what is happening with our workflow. So it was triggered and the task was created. In this scenario, in our, let's say, workflow, we are sending the task or assigning the task dynamically to the supplier of this order. And to facilitate for the demo, it will be me who will be receiving both the tasks of the supplier and the owner. So if I go to my inbox, I should have received one new task. I can refresh it. Yes, I have received it. Here, if I click on it, yes, I see the sales order number, my amount. If I match the amount, it should be matching with my sales order, which is here. So it's matching the amount. And as acting as a supplier, I can approve this or accept the order. So I would say accepted and click on approve. So now this task is gone. So if I go back to my workflow just to refresh our memory, the order was triggered or the workflow was triggered. It met the condition for a certain business rule. It went to the approval form for the supplier. It was approved from there. And technically now I should again get a confirmation as an owner of the order. to finally submit my order. So if I go back, I should receive another request for the same order here, and I see the message from supplier is order is accepted. And here further, either I can reject it or I can also see the log, what happened at the different steps. And then as an owner, I can submit this order. So if I take a step back again here, after my order confirmation, what should happen technically is, if I zoom in a bit, hope it is visible to everyone, order confirmation, I should receive a confirmation email and the order status should be updated back to S/4HANA Cloud. So first, let's check in our monitoring, what's the status, data status here. Yeah, so it's completed. One thing is notice is that it's completed and we got a confirmation email. We should have got a confirmation email and the status should be updated back to approved in S/4HANA or released. So if I go to my mailbox quickly to check it, yep, I got the sales order number and the material has been approved. So technically now I should have my S/4HANA sales order also in release status. So let's go back to our S/4HANA Cloud and see the order status here. Let me refresh the screen. Yeah. Yes. So if we see here, I mean, I have the option to edit or to continue with this document or follow-up documents like delivery document, shipment documents. We can continue with that because it has passed our approval process and has been approved by both suppliers and the owner and submitted back. And this in turn will trigger the event from change perspective and with the status of approval that is released. After that, if we think of it, with this business events, though we achieve the customization requirement of approval process, and it does not only mean that this was the only customization requirement. With the same event, it is also possible that I want to continue or indicate my shipment application that a shipment should be triggered, or my delivery system that delivery should be created, right? So these business events can be responsible for multiple applications. It can also be possible I want to replicate the same sales order with the same event to Salesforce, my CRM system, or for that matter, my another procurement system, right? So that is also possible with the let's say strategy of event-driven architecture. So if you are selecting EDA with the same event, we have the possibility to create multiple queues for the same topic, as also highlighted by Christian in the beginning of the call. So let me take a step back here. So if you see here for sales order, we had multiple application. See, I can minimize a bit to see different. So for example, here, if I click on Salesforce, this queue is for Salesforce, and it is also listening to the same topic, that is sales order create. And with the same topic or message or event, Salesforce can also receive the sales order via micro integration or direct integration, depending upon the setup which we have done. Similarly, we have queues for other target systems. So the message is, one, that using SAP BTP and the services within it, we are able to meet the custom requirement, what we have of different sorts, using advanced event mesh and integration suite. And on top of it, we're also able to meet the requirement of seamlessly integrating all the other downstream system, which is interested in these kinds of information and events. So rather than having point-to-point integration between S/4HANA and other downstream application, we can have, let's say, this is also represented in this demo. We can have events coming to Event Broker, and from there, they can be either micro integration, which is facilitating further orchestration to the downstream system, or it can also be my custom applications, my custom workflows are reacting to those events to meet my business requirements. So it goes hand in hand. And this is exactly what we are trying to demonstrate. If you see that with the same event, it's also going to Salesforce or to Coupa for that matter, based on the requirement. And there can be n number of applications. And on top of it, with Event Broker, we also get the advantage there that from retry functionality, from scaling perspective, which if we have to use S/4HANA Cloud for retriggering the message or for handling the errors, it's quite complicated. But if we are using the EDA strategy, then all these complexities goes inside EDA, because we have the option of retrying the message, of adding a new subscriber without thinking of completely custom or integration building from scratch. So those options which we get when we adopt EDA strategy. So this is an overview of how BTP can help us in combination with EDA in achieving clean core strategy when it comes to S/4HANA Cloud. And with this, I would like to hand over back to Hugo and Christian to finish it, and then also hear some questions. We will have some time for questions as well.
Perfect. Thanks. Thanks, Andy. Let me stop sharing. I'll take over. Yeah, so thanks again for the demo and the use case. So what we want to discuss next is, so you've seen the explanations by both Christian and Akit on how to use EDA in a clean core setup. If you want to work with the advanced event mesh, depending on where you are today, of course, in your clean core strategy, you might want to participate in a rapid pilot program. This has been set up by Solus, and it's a good opportunity for you to get hands-on with the technology. And Christian, maybe you could tell a little bit more about this setup and what you achieved in 5 half-day sessions.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Hugo. Yeah, so as we discussed, kind of like Solus is a technology partner of SAP that is behind the advanced event mesh. And in that role, we do run these workshops roughly once every quarter, where if you want to join us, you can take part and really implement some of these scenarios that we were discussing today, right? So keeping the core clean and lean with S/4HANA by firing events and then doing something in BTP is one of the core use cases for advanced event mesh. It's not the only one. We can do many other things as well. But if you want to explore advanced event mesh, get hands-on with advanced event mesh, learn about event-driven architectures, event management, and explore some of these services in BTP that you can use in an event-driven manner to do your side-by-side extensions, then come join us in one of our rapid pilot programs. It's a 5 half-day session, so it's usually we run this from Monday to Friday, either in the morning or in the afternoon. We try to run these in a way that we can both serve customers in APAC as well as in Europe, as in the North or in the Americas as a whole. So there will be dates for APAC probably beginning of September, and Europe and Americas probably more middle of September or end of September. We're still scheduling them. So unfortunately, I don't have a date right now or a registration page that you can sign up to right away. But we will be advertising these events via the SAP event site. So look out for those. If you're interested, reach out to your SAP BTP customer success managers, because they know when these rapid pilots are being held, and they can notify you as soon as these are being scheduled. And then you can come and register, and we will teach you how to use UI5 cards and connect them to advanced event mesh. We will use some event-enabled iFlows. We will show you how you can trigger business process automation workflows in via advanced event mesh, via event coming out of your S4 or ECC system. And we'll also show you how you can event enable your ECC or S4HANA system. Yeah, so
Right.
as I said, look out for those. Thanks, Hugo.
Thanks, Christian. The other way, if you haven't started your transformation from PO to CI yet, and you want to understand how to approach this modernization, a PO to CI assessment will give you a good starting point to understand how to modernize your integrations. We offer a free PO to CI migration assessment and help you understand how to get started with your clean core strategy. As a starting point, we'll take SAP's own migration assessment and will help you to understand the content of this assessment, provide you with insights on how to enrich this assessment through automation we can apply to the migration assessment. So if you are interested, please reach out to us via the chat, or you can contact us at hello@rochoconsultancy.com. We'll now move to the Q&A section. There's been some questions coming in. This was monitored by my colleague Martin. Martin, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Hugo, and thank you, Christian and Ankit, for walking us in detail through the clean core topic, adopting EDA. We do have some questions coming in the chat. We'll address them in chronological order, starting with the first question, which is related to advanced event mesh. So the question is, do we create events on custom tables, CRUD operations from S4? I think this question would go to Christian, maybe, as it relates to advanced event mesh.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. So the simple answer is that there are other options to trigger your events. And they're certainly under the covers initiated by table changes, but generally what we want with events is we want the business context of why a table changes. So there's better ways how you can trigger events in S4. There's built-in notification events or wrap business objects that you can use to fire an event. There's also an eventing framework, an older eventing framework that is based on BOR objects, where you can use iDocs sometimes to trigger events. There is the option with some of the event enablement options to also listen to change documents in the table CD-HDR and CD-POS. Yeah, there's many ways how you can trigger events. It's generally not based on, like, we're not doing change data capture with those typically, because those would produce lower level events. Because if you get an address that is updated in the address table, you might want to know why that address was updated, right? That is in important business context that you get if you actually use the event as a trigger and not just the table changes. So yeah, hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Christian. Okay, moving on to the next question, which is related to Coupa and event-driven integration. So the question is whether subscribing a queue topic to Coupa for events is applicable to all modules. As an example, invoice creation in Coupa. Ankit, would you like to take this one?
Sure. So one thing is, I think when it comes to cloud application, few of the applications do offer this option to read or let's say to subscribe to these queues directly. But in this case of Coupa, say for example, we would not have the option to directly subscribe. And what is recommended in these kinds of scenarios is micro integration, basically, which basically is residing in your integration suite. And you are and they are subscribed to these queues within advanced event mesh, and then doing the required transformation and orchestration, and then pushing the message to Coupa. And also why this will be more seamless, because of the possibility of adapters available in integration suite. So say for example, there's a Coupa adapter available in integration suite, cloud integration, and that can really make things effective in terms of building these micro integration, how we can call them. to do the last mile integration from Event Broker or Advanced Event Mesh to Coupa or any other cloud application. And in some applications, if it's a totally custom application, you can directly subscribe to it. So it's not necessary that you need every time micro integration between.
Yeah, thank you, Ankit. And on the topic of Coupa, indeed, there is a Coupa adapter available directly from the Business Accelerator Hub at api.sap.com. So if you need more information specifically on the Coupa SAP integration topic, feel free to reach out to us and we'll be happy to provide further input there. Moving on to the next question, which is related again to queues. So do we need to create queues for each one of the consumer applications? And I'll let Christian reply this one.
Good question. So first of all, generally you do want a queue for applications when you cannot tolerate message loss, which is the case in most of the business use cases that we know around SAP. So think about the queue as the personal inbox of an application. So that queue will get created for this application, and we will put some subscription on that queue to say, okay, what data is this application interested in? And then whenever something gets published to a topic that this application is interested in, it will end up in this queue, and it's for that application to process. So there may be multiple parts of the same application that read from the queue if you're doing kind of like load balancing in your backend application, but generally we think of that as being multiple parts of the same system that are just sharing the workload of processing the data. Now, you don't have to have a queue if your use case does not require that you never lose a message. Think about maybe IoT sensor data. Maybe it's okay if you miss some sensor data from time to time. You can also subscribe to topics directly, but in those cases, if your application is down, there's nowhere to put that message and you just miss that message, right? So persistent guaranteed delivery requires a queue. And with the second part of the questions about the routing, so we generally advise that you don't put messages directly into a queue as a publisher, because then you're basically doing a point-to-point integration. You're putting a message directly into the inbox of someone else, right? What we do recommend is that you publish messages to a topic, and those topics can be routed across the mesh. So the queue needs to be somewhere for consistency, data access reasons, but your publisher could be in one location and your queue could be in a completely different location. And if the publisher publishes the topic and the queue has a subscription to that topic or a matching wildcard subscription, then the data will get routed to that queue, and likewise for any other queues in other locations.
Thanks, Christian. Thanks for addressing both of these questions. The next one is related to how long the event/notification is available, so the expiration period in the queue of a subscriber to be consumed.
Yeah, so I was just switching away, thinking I'm not the next one, but this question, I guess, is good to be with regards to expiry on the messages. First of all, you have options with that. The default behavior is that a broker will keep a message until it is successfully consumed. So trying to be consistent, right? We're trying to never lose a message. That's a default behavior. The message, if you're not reading it, will just stay there until the end of time or until the broker gets deleted or something like that, right? But there are ways that you can put expiry on data. So the publisher can specify an expiry timeout on a message when it publishes it. You can also set those settings on a queue that override everything. So if you have a specific queue that you're reading from and you know any data that goes into that queue is no longer interesting after a day, or an hour or a minute, whatever that period might be, you can basically set as expiry, and then the broker will throw those messages away if they're older than the timeout that you have set. So it's possible to do that, yes.
Thanks, Christian, for addressing this one as well. And the next one, I think, would also come to you, as it is on the difference between advanced event mesh and standard event mesh. So the question is, what is the specific business case that justifies using advanced event mesh instead of standard event mesh?
Okay, yeah, I'll try to answer this short and brief. Generally, think about event mesh as an entry-level service that you can use if you want to experiment with events. It was designed for the integrate and extend use cases, so it is around clean core, but mostly like when you're doing notification-only events, because you're limited in payload size with event mesh. Whenever you have larger use cases, whenever you want to integrate SAP and non-SAP, and if you want to distribute more data, like in master data distribution use cases, or just generally when you want to build a solid foundation for event-driven architecture in general, then that can be in your SAP ecosystem, but also outside your SAP ecosystem, then advanced event mesh is the better solution. It is the more premium solution. So if you really just need an event notification to trigger something, maybe event mesh will serve you for some time. But if you are a large enterprise that has also strict requirements around monitoring and security and needs advanced features, then that's where you should go and look at advanced event mesh.
Great. Thanks, Christian, for sharing the details between the two platforms. And the next question that we have refers to the demo that Ankit was showing. Essentially, it is referring to the fact that SAP build looks similar to Microsoft Power Apps, and what would be the case if we go to a more enterprise-like complexity use case with additional business rules, different UI design needs, and a data model? Would it still be feasible with the building blocks in SAP build?
Yes, I can take that part. And yes, for the demo purpose, we wanted to keep it a bit simple so people can follow. But in BTP, it's totally possible to build complex applications when it comes, and we have all the services available there. And that too, as well as highlighting in my explanation, it's not just limited to RAP-based model that is using ABAP and CDS views. It's also you can use completely a language, for example, Java or Node.js, which is you are more comfortable with in the technical team. So both the options are there, and full stack application is also possible within BTP, and where you are reacting on the basis of different events coming from S4HANA, or you're using different OData services or CDS views, depending upon the model which you have chosen. So answer is yes, we can have completely complex application working based, and that based on the data which we need from our backend system, for example, S4HANA, or even from other cloud application system which is in the landscape. So it's almost like having a platform you can deliver applications like any other platform, be it Azure or AWS for that matter. Yeah.
Thanks, Ankit. And the next question is again, I believe Christian brought some more insights into the difference between advanced event mesh and event mesh, but I think this one refers again to the demo. So could this architecture be implemented using only SAP event mesh without Solus?
Yeah, so I guess I read this as like event mesh versus advanced event mesh. Actually, both technologies are based on Solus. So actually, the technology under the covers is the same, but the scope of the service, as I already explained, is different, right? So to answer your question directly, yes, you could probably implement this with event mesh. It was certainly designed to do these side-by-side extensions. Advanced event mesh just offers you additional benefits that you get once you go further beyond that, right? If you really want to do full event-driven architecture. And I think there's another question about event-driven architecture that this is kind of leading into. So if you're Martin, you're okay, I'll take that right away as well. So the question is, can EDA be recommended for one-to-many master data replication? And if yes, what should be the considerations to be kept in mind? So especially like when you were talking about master data replication, or we prefer the term master data distribution, that's absolutely like a good use case for event-driven architecture. And that's really where you probably will struggle doing this with event mesh, where you will need advanced event mesh because it can provide you a more enterprise-grade service, and it allows for larger payloads as well. So event mesh is limited to 1 megabyte payloads. We're thinking about master data. Sometimes that fits into 1 megabyte, but often like you will have larger payloads of data that you want to distribute. So you will need advanced event mesh for that. And also, if we're thinking about applications, thinking back about the distributedness of our system landscape these days, right? Event mesh is also a service that sits in one location only. You can pick where in BTP it is, but it is then a central service that you're pushing the data through. With advanced event mesh, you really get the mesh of brokers, and that can be beneficial in a master data distribution use case where your systems might be all over the globe, and you may want to route data from Europe to Asia or the Americas or vice versa. So that's generally good to do. Now, when we do event-driven master data replication or distribution with event-driven architecture, we're just pushing out changes, right? So the considerations here is that you are using basically the concept here of eventual consistency, right? So you publish a change that will eventually get to your downstream system. It's not like syncing those systems one by one, right? So having back and forth between the systems like you have with, if you're using SLT or something like that, database replication technologies. So there's some differences here. The benefits are that you're just pushing the data out and everyone can listen into it, but you have to think a little bit about how do you deal with inconsistencies. If one system has an issue and loses messages or something like that, then you may need a resync process somewhere else. Advanced Event Mesh may be able to provide that. We have replay capabilities built in as well. So even if an application loses some messages, some updates, and manage to get those deleted off the queue, there are some features in Advanced Event Mesh that will help you with that. But it is different to a synchronous replication where these kind of things are going back and forth and exchanging deltas and stuff like that. Right. Hope that answered the questions.
Yeah. Thank you, Christian. I don't see any further questions coming in the chat, so it's good that we were managed to cover all of these. Yeah, and passing over to Hugo to close off the session.
Yeah, thanks, Akit, Christian, Martin, and thanks all the participants. It's been good getting the questions in. And with this, we'll end the event. If there's any more things you want to know, reach out to us at hello@consultancy.com. Happy to pick up the questions. And everybody, thanks for your participation and have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.